morning, everyone. Thanks ever so much for dialing in today. We've got quite a few people registered, so we're just going to wait a minute or two just to allow everybody to join and get comfortable, and then we'll begin. Let's have a look. Great, we can see numbers. We've got quite a few people already signed in. Okay, so I'm going to just introduce everybody. So good morning. My name's Faith Denning and I'm the marketing manager here at InfoTrack. I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar where we're going to hear about the new conveyancing quality scheme practice management standards to ensure that you and your firm stay up to date. So taking you through today's webinar, I'm delighted to be joined by Tracy Thompson, who is an authorised assessor for CQS. Tracy will be joined by InfoTrack's Northern Sales Manager, Lisa Edwards. So before we begin the webinar, I'd just like to draw your attention, please, to the Q&A tab, which you'll see located at the bottom of your screen. We are going to run a question and answer session at the end of this webinar. So please type in any questions that you might have for either Tracy or Lisa, along with your name, please, into the Q&A box. We've got quite a lot to get through today, so if we do run out of time, or if your question requires further clarification, if you leave your name, we'll be able to extract your information and follow up with you directly after the webinar. So let's crack on. I'm going to hand you over to Tracy now to begin the webinar. Thank you very much.
Excellent, thanks very much, Faye. So good morning, everybody. Thanks very much for joining us today. I am Tracy Thompson. I was appointed as lead assessor for CQS back in 2019, and that's the reason why I'm talking to you today. So, purpose of today's session, I'm going to talk you through a whistle-stop tour of CQS, what's happening, when it's happening, why it's happening, and then I will take you through some detail regarding the core practice management standard, a little bit of information about what you need to know, how you can demonstrate compliance when the on-site assessment occurs in your practice, and I'll also give you an indicator as to where the changes are located against the 2019 version of the core practice management standard. Okay, so CQS, a little bit of a brief history. What's it all about? Conveyancing Quality Scheme Accreditation was introduced back in 2010, and it was introduced by the Law Society, who own and manage the standard. And the purpose of the introduction was to bring assurance to the lending communities as to the quality and integrity of member practices. And that was 12 years ago, and here we are now in 2022 with over 3,500 CQS accredited practices, which accounts for more than a third of the legal sector. Whilst CQS was originally introduced in 2010 to improve professional standards in the residential conveyancing sector, the scheme largely over the last 12 years has attracted a lack of credibility, really, on the basis that the whole regime has been very much paper-based exercise. So if any of you actually deal with the annual reaccreditation process, you'll be aware that you complete the application form, you give a lot of information to the Law Society about the practice, about the work that you do, where that work comes from, what the value of the work that you're dealing with, the people that you have in the organisation. You're also giving lots of information about your claims and complaints and any qualified accountants reports, etc., etc. So all that information is provided to the Law Society on an annual basis, and that builds a profile for the Law Society as to what your practice looks like. On occasion, over the last 12 years, there has been various desktop assessments having taken place. So where the Law Society have considered that they just want to check out a little bit more information about a particular firm, or where they've identified that we could do with verifying some part of the information supplied to them, then there have been the odd desktop assessment take place, whereby a firm has been required to provide some further information or policy or procedure, etc. But largely, over that last 12 years, the standard has been unchecked and unverified. And there has been a lot of talk over the years about bringing in some kind of verification process to ensure that CQS firms are following the standard, that they do actually have all the required policies and procedures in place, and that they are able to demonstrate that quality and integrity that the Law Society and the lending communities wish to see. I was appointed to the Law Society Lexel panel back in 2013. I'm a Lexel consultant and a Lexel assessor, as well as lead assessor for CQS. And there were conversations taking place then about bringing some kind of verification process into place with CQS, but obviously it takes a lot of organisation, and here we are 9 years later with some changes to the standard, which are actually bringing that process into place. So the changes to CQS. So we had some changes that took effect back in 2019, which of course seems an awful long time ago now. We had the new core practice management standard, which became compulsory back in May 2019. Then we had the new conveyancing protocols, which became compulsory to follow in practice from August 2019. We carried out a pilot. Law Society carried out a pilot of on-site assessments back in November 2019 through to February 2020. And there was always going to be a period of review and reflection on the back of that pilot to obviously update processes, and for the Law Society to, to review their documentation and their processes, and obviously for us as assessors to be able to feed back to the Law Society. Additionally, Centre for Assessment, who are the authorised assessment body based in Manchester, for them to be able to feed back. And the original launch of the on-site assessment regime was due to take place in and around April, Easter 2020. But of course, we had COVID. So COVID hit, and for the last 2+ years, the Law Society have been concentrating on attempting to support the profession in terms of supporting their mental health and well-being, and not wanting to put any additional pressure on practices, but in particular residential conveyancing practices, obviously with the exponential increase in workloads that you've had to deal with stamp duty holiday, etc., etc. So we have had a delay to the renewed changes to CQS, but you'll see, you'll have heard no doubt from the Law Society at the end of, I think it was about March time, that they made the announcement that we have a new core practice management standard, which became compulsory to follow in practice from the 1st of May 2022, so a few weeks ago, and that the formal launch of the on-site assessment will start to take place also from the 1st of May 2022, and that firms need to be in a position whereby they are assessment ready from that date. So I think there was about 6 or 7 weeks notice from the Law Society that these changes were happening, but obviously there has been a lot of a lot of communication, a lot of talk over the last 2 to 3 years in relation to the on-site assessment regime commencing and what's likely to be happening. I've been doing CQS training now for probably 2.5, over 2.5 years. So practices ought to have been aware that these changes were due to be deployed at some point in the near future. So the new core practice management standard, I'm going to take you through that just to identify for you where the changes appear. But in relation to the on-site assessments, I'll give you a little bit more information about what those assessments look like and what the what's likely to happen in practice. So the Law Society will make the selection for the practice to be assessed, and they will then notify the practice. So the notification that practice has been selected for an on-site assessment will be sent directly to the Senior Responsible Officer. So SROs, if you're the SRO, make sure you keep an eye out for emails from the Law Society. The Law Society don't spam, so if you do receive an email from particularly the accreditations office, then make sure that you do read it thoroughly. It will either be giving you some information about what's happening and when it's happening and what you need to be aware of, or indeed it could be your notification that you've been selected for an on-site assessment. So, so that notification will be emailed to the SRO. It will also go in hard copy format as well to the practice. And it's a very comprehensive notification from the Law Society. It will set out all the information about what the assessment looks like, who the assessor is, what time they'll turn up. It will set out details as to what documentation you will need to have available on the day of the assessment, what to do in the event that that you have any queries or concerns, etc., etc. And you will be given a selection of dates to be able to choose from for your on-site assessment. So you'll be provided with not less than 4 weeks notice, and you'll be provided with 3 dates. And you as a practice will need to identify which of those 3 dates is most appropriate for your practice, taking into account obviously availability of key people such as the SRO and obviously your day job that you're doing. So so you get 4 weeks notice, 3 dates provided. You select which is the best date for you. You advise the Law Society. And also to note, contained within that notification from the Law Society will be a request for certain key policies and procedures. So the key documents that need to be provided to the Law Society before the on-site assessment takes place. So when you receive that notification, you'll have 2 weeks to be able to provide those documents to the Law Society. And these are key residential conveyancing policies that probably wouldn't come as a surprise to name them as, for example, the anti-money laundering policy, your property and mortgage fraud policy, your leasehold policy, reporting to lenders, procedures, SDLT and LTT policies, etc., etc. So those specific policies and procedures that are very specific to risks within the residential conveyancing department. So key policies and procedures, you supply those to the Law Society. They will review them and just a preliminary review, and they will then forward those to the assessor for the assessor to be able to undertake a preliminary review before actually going out to do the on-site assessment. And then the assessment will take place on the day that you have agreed with the Law Society. If there are any issues, then do engage with the Law Society. Make sure that you have a conversation with them, and if there's any particular concerns or any issues, just engage with them. What you don't want to do, obviously, is find yourselves in any difficulty in relation to kind of not engaging with them in relation to the assessment. One of the things that I always point out is when we as assessors go out on site, one of the first questions that we are usually asked is, why are you here? And ultimately, we don't know the reason for the assessment. So as assessors, we are appointed by the Centre for Assessment, who are based in Manchester. They are the only authorised assessment body able to provide CQS assessors that are authorised by the Law Society. All the assessors were all approved and trained by the Law Society. We're all Lexcel assessors, so we are extremely experienced in undertaking quality standard assessment for the Law Society, and the majority of us are also lawyers with property backgrounds as well. So we don't know the reason for assessment. Quite often, we are asked, is this because the SRA did an investigation last year, or is it anything? Is there any particular reason why you're here? We don't know the reason for that, and we won't know the reason for it either. We won't be getting told that information. So the actual assessment itself, if you are Lexcel accredited, the on-site assessment will look vaguely familiar to you. It's very similar to a Lexcel assessment, although with Lexcel, the assessor, the assessment body and the practice tend to engage a lot more before and after the on-site assessment, whereas with CQS, the whole process is managed by the Law Society before the assessment and after the assessment as well. So the only dealings you will have with the assessor is on the day of the assessment. The majority of assessments will take place over half to 1 day, depending on the size and profile of the practice and the residential conveyancing department. When the pilot was undertaken back in 2019, 2020, as authorised assessors, all of our assessments were 1 day on site, and they were from 9:30 to 4:30. So the majority of assessments will look like that in practice. So on the day of the assessment, you will be notified that your assessor will be named, and they will turn up at 9:30. Once we come on site, we will start with an opening meeting, and the purpose of that opening meeting is just to make introductions, have a conversation about the schedule for the day, which has already been provided to the SRO by the Law Society. Make sure that everybody that has been selected for interview is still available. Obviously, just look at timings. We don't want to impact on your working day. We know you'll have client appointments, completions, etc., etc. So it's just to deal with the detail of the assessment. Obviously, we can have a conversation if the practice are concerned, if they have any issues, if they want to ask us any questions. And also, you know, it's an opportunity for the practice to give us some information if they have any particular issues in practice, or they have had any difficulties. That's the opportunity to be able to have a conversation with us to kind of fill us in on what's been happening and just give us some additional information. So during the course of that opening meeting, we will be obtaining open and closed file lists from you. You will have been notified in that letter from the Law Society. If you are electronic files rather than paper, and I know a lot of practices now are hybrid, then it may be that we select files from your case management system by, you know, drilling down to the fee earner, date opened, etc., etc. So again, this is the purpose of the opening meeting, just to establish how, you know, how we will deal with the detail. If we are selecting files from, you know, file open and close lists, then we'll make those selections during the opening meeting, and then obviously you can go off and get those files and bring them back to us. The SRO needs to be available. Doesn't need to be available for the whole of the day, but certainly for some part of the day, so that we can have a conversation. Ideally, the opening meeting is a good time to be able to have that conversation, but not necessarily stringent in that regard, as long as they are available to us at some point during the day. And then once we've had that opening meeting, we will then conduct the assessment. So we will continue to review the policies and procedures that we have in our possession already. We will then review other policies and procedures that haven't yet been supplied to the Law Society. And we will also review central records as well. So these are things like your financial records, your file review records, your undertakings register, these kind of documents we refer to as central records. And again, in that letter, you will have a list of all the documents that you will need to have available for us. We'll review the open and closed files that we've selected earlier on, or that we're selecting from your case management system. If you are electronic, you run all your files electronically, we'll need access to your case management system either through a desktop, a laptop, or indeed we'll have our own laptops with us, so we can always access through a Microsoft gateway or VPN if you can set us up for that. And then we'll conduct interviews as well. So the interviews will be with the SRO, with fee earners, but also we have during the pilot been directed to conduct interviews with other relevant persons. So key members of support staff, and also accounts staff as well. So the Law Society can have a register of relevant persons for every practice, and that's when you make your initial application, you fill in personnel forms for all of those people that will form part of the CQS accreditation application, and then from the point that you become CQS accredited, the Law Society require the SRO to advise them of anybody that leaves, and also any new starters with a new personnel form. So the Law Society have always got an up-to-date register of all those relevant people within the organisation, and those are partners, qualified conveyancers, unqualified conveyancers, key support staff, and accounts personnel as well. So the interviews can be with any of those relevant persons. I would say probably 70–75% will be with fee earners, whether qualified or not. But as I say, the Law Society have that up-to-date register. It's the Law Society that makes selections for who is being interviewed, and that is identified to the practice in that initial notification. So again, if there's any issues either before the assessment or on the day, then you need to engage with us. And if we need to make a substitution, then we'll make that substitution like for like, with the role of the person that is no longer available for whatever reason. So that's what the assessment looks like. At the end of the day, we will have a feedback meeting, and that feedback meeting shouldn't bring any surprises. Hopefully somebody has been looking after us during the day and popping their head in to see if everything's okay, because that gives us the opportunity to be able to ask questions. If we can't find anything, we can then say, oh, can't find this policy, do you have it somewhere else? And then we can obviously keep the assessment going smoothly throughout the day. If we do have any issues, we do find any non-compliances, then we will feed that back as we go through the day. So when we do get to that feedback meeting, there shouldn't be any surprises for the practice, and we will agree actions going forward. Let me just do a bit of a time check. Okay, so potential assessment outcomes at the end of that day. There is no simple pass or fail to CQS, same with Lexel. So that's something really important to note. Quite often, we are asked questions about, that include the words pass or fail. So it's all about non-compliances. So your potential assessment outcomes, you've got 3 potential outcomes, and that is that you are able to fully demonstrate compliance with CQS, and that is all the requirements of the protocols and the core practice management standard, and making sure that all elements of each particular requirement is in place. And then we have other potential assessment outcomes, which are non-compliances. Now, non-compliance is quite simply where a practice is not able to demonstrate compliance with a particular requirement of the standard. So there are 2 different categories of non-compliance. Minors and majors. So minor non-compliance is where a practice will be given 21 days to undertake the corrective action and provide the evidence of that corrective action having been carried out directly to the Law Society. And a major non-compliance is where a practice is given 3 months to undertake that corrective action, and again to provide the evidence to the Law Society. Or it could be, if depending on the nature of the major non-compliance, or if there are numerous major non-compliances, it could be that the firm will be reassessed only in relation to those areas of non-compliance. If it wouldn't be practical to email various things to the Law Society, particularly if you had numerous major non-compliances. So give you a quick example of those 2 things. Minor non-compliance, let me think. So we have a requirement, the initial correspondence to the other side's conveyancer requires you to include the client names and the purchase price. So say, for example, we do file reviews and we see that on the files that initial correspondence is missing the client names, for example. That would be a non-compliance, and it would be recorded as a non-compliance. And the corrective action would be to update the template. So update the template, whoever does your coding, whether it's your internal IT department, IT manager, external IT, somebody who's a whiz with IT in the department, pull in the code in, pull that information in from the case management system, include the client names, run off a new template and provide that as evidence of the corrective action having been completed. So it's a 10–15 minute job. That is something that the practice can complete within 21 days with ease. And an example of a major non-compliance, for example, if we have a practice, and I use this as a very real example of a practice which was assessed during the pilot, anti-money laundering policy provided to the assessor contained a different name to the firm that was being assessed. referred to outdated regulation, referred to money laundering regulations 2007, clearly not fit for purpose whatsoever, did not meet the requirements of 2017 money laundering legislation, and of course that's a requirement of the core practice management standard. And when we started to kind of look into the nitty-gritty of anti-money laundering procedures, they were not robust, again, didn't comply with legislation. And there was a lot of work to do for this particular practice. So that's not something that you can fix within 21 days. It's not a case of just getting a new policy and saying, you know, there we go. It's a policy that needs to be written, that represents the risks in your residential conveyancing department, that then sets out the procedures that will work for your department. You need to develop those procedures, you need to document them, you need to train people. They need to then start, you know, your team needs to then start following those procedures. And when they then need to see that they are working in practice and that they're embedded in the practice. So that's something that would need 3 months to be able to deal with the corrective actions. And something like that is possibly likely that, a revisit might be necessary to be able to have conversations with a couple of members of staff to make sure that, you know, that this anti-money laundering policy and procedures is actually embedded in the practice. So that's just a couple of examples of what major and minor non-compliances look like. In terms of who is being assessed, as I said, the Law Society are making the selections. They will make those selections proactively and reactively. So if you recall, when I first started talking to you, you provide a lot of information to the Law Society on an annual basis. So it may be that some information that's contained within that accreditation application form, or maybe previous accreditation application forms that fall within the same cycle. It may be that there's a pattern or trend or something that is a key indicator to the Law Society that they would like to engage with a practice, or maybe they feel that there's a particular area of practice that could do with a closer inspection, for example. So it may be that actually information in the Law Society's possession have actually resulted in the practice being selected for assessment. It may be that they are in receipt of information from a third party that might result in a practice being selected for assessment. Or it could quite simply be that, you know, your firm name, you know, just falls within a certain place within the, you know, the database. Or, you know, you start with A, or you are geographically located close to an assessor. So, you know, it could be, you know, any number of reasons. But as I say, as assessors, we won't know that reason. The assessments as it stands at the moment will not necessarily fall within the cycle, so the reaccreditation cycle. So it could be at any point during the 3-year cycle, but it could be at any point during the year as well. So not necessarily on the case of you submit your reaccreditation application and that will then trigger the practice being selected for assessment. It might do, but that's not necessarily cast in stone. There are 3,500 plus accredited firms. Ultimately, the goal is that all CQS accredited practices will be selected for assessments at some point in the short to medium term. Assessments will be carried out nationwide. Assessors are geographically located throughout the country, and the majority of us travel as well. I think I spend most of my time on the south coast, even though I live in the northwest. So ultimately, it's not a case of if you are selected for assessment, it's more a case of when you will be selected for assessment. Okay, so quickly, the core practice management standard has been updated. This is always going to be a working document. So the Law Society are very keen for practices to understand that as, you know, new risks emerge, as patterns and trends, identify those emerging risks, as obviously, you know, updates happen to legislation, to regulation, to other quality standards, for example, that will always then feed into the working document of the core practice management standard. So it will be updated on a fairly regular basis to take into account changes to what's going on in residential conveyancing sector. We had the 2019 version of the standard, which contained 6 sections and 34 requirements. That has now been expanded to 7 sections. We didn't have people management in the previous CPMS. And whilst we have gone from 34 to 40 individual requirements, that's not to say that there are 6 new requirements. Some of the requirements have been split out. So there are actually 3 specific new individual numbered requirements contained within the new core practice management standard. Some of the standard is fairly straightforward and doesn't really need much interpretation. So, for example, practices must document who has overall financial control or financial responsibility. That's fairly straightforward. But then we have other areas of the standard that are far more complex. So we'd expect really. So anti-money laundering policy, for example, is one individual requirement, but has quite a number of subsections, same with leasehold, property and mortgage fraud, supervision procedures, etc., etc. So, so some areas are more complex and need a lot more consideration. Worth pointing out to you that the standard is not prescriptive. So what I mean by that is if the standard was prescriptive, that would be the Law Society telling you as a practice what you need to do and how you need to do it. And that's not the case at all. It's very similar, I suppose, to outcomes focused regulation. There is a core practice management standard requirement that you need to meet. How you choose to meet that is entirely up to you, providing you've given it due consideration, taking into account the exposure to the risk in your practice, as long as you have a sensible, logical and proportionate approach to what the corresponding policies and procedures look like. Give you a quick example of that. Practice I saw during the pilot had an undertakings policy that stated quite clearly, CQS states only partners can give an undertaking. Okay, that would be prescriptive. The actual requirement in CQS is practices must have a procedure for the giving, monitoring and discharge of undertakings. Okay, you see the difference. One says that only partners can give an undertaking, the other one says that you must have a procedure for those 3 different elements. And ultimately it's down to the practice to decide what that procedure looks like. So who can give an undertaking? How is it given? Where is it recorded? How is it monitored? Who monitors it? How often is it monitored? What happens when the undertaking is discharged? Where is that, where do the records get updated, by who, etc., etc. So it's all the detail that needs to go in that procedure that we would expect to see. And it's your decision to make, as taking into account the risks, as to who is able to give those undertakings. And it may very well be that your decision is only a partner can give an undertaking. That's absolutely great. That's really good practice. And that's managing risk well, as opposed to another practice might decide that any residential conveyancing fee earner can give an undertaking, which is not necessarily best practice. And we would have a conversation about the risks involved. But again, that's where your judgment comes into play, with the requirements not being prescriptive, and then prescriptive requirements that don't exist in the standard. Lexel accredited firms, you should be at least 50% of the way there. So there is a significant overlap between Lexel and CQS. So you should be able to demonstrate at least half of the core practice management standard in practice. And then for CQS accredited practices that aspire to being Lexel accredited to help with their professional indemnity insurance, for example, then really good opportunity for you to get all of your ducks in a row in relation to residential conveyancing, and then to take the next steps to becoming Lexel accredited, which a lot of practices actually that I've spoken to over the course of the last 2 to 3 years. Certain practices are actually quite excited about that opportunity to be able to take baby steps to becoming Lexel accredited, because obviously it can be a bit of a minefield, particularly if you are multidisciplinary practice. So just point out to you here a couple of things. Procedures need to be written down. So a procedure must be documented. So where we have a requirement that says a practice must have a procedure, we expect to see corresponding documentation that sets out all of those things I just mentioned to you: the whats, the whys, the wherefores, the hows, the authorisations, etc., etc. Similarly with policies and plans. And then we have two different terminologies here. We've got musts and shoulds. So where a requirement uses the word must, which majority of the requirements in the core practice management standard do, it is mandatory. It applies to all CQS accredited practices, regardless of your profile, regardless of whether you are a national firm with multiple regional offices and many partners, right the way through to if you're a sole practitioner working on your own. If it states must, then you are bound by that, and you must have that requirement being followed in practice. If it's a should, there is only one should contained within core practice management standard, then it is optional. So you can depart from a requirement that uses the word should. But if you do, you need to document why you have departed from it and be able to have a sensible and logical conversation with the assessor. So should, for example, is requirements to have information management security policy. You should be accredited against Cyber Essentials. Okay, so most important thing that I want you to take away from my whistle-stop tour of CQS today is these 3 tiers. So I talk and have talked a lot about a 3-tier approach for a long time. And this is what you need to make sure you're having practice to be able to demonstrate compliance. And it's the same with any quality management standard. You need to have the 3-tier process of say as you do as you say, and provide the evidence. And that's my own wording. That's just the way I describe it, because it's easy to follow. So the say as you do is all your documented policies and procedures. The do as you say is making sure that those policies and procedures are followed in practice. So they must mirror each other. So you do need to have an alignment between what you're documenting that you say you do and what actually happens in practice. And then the 3rd tier, which is just as important, is making sure that there is evidence of the action being taken. So always remember this. So, start with your core practice management standard. What are the requirements? Make sure your documented policy and procedure meets the core practice management standard requirements. Then what you're documenting in your policy and procedure, make sure that that's actually what happens in practice, and then ensure that there is some evidence. If a file, if we came to pick up a file, or whether the NCA comes to pick up a file, whether the SRA comes to pick up a file, the same principle applies. If there's no evidence it didn't happen and you're on the back foot from the outset, and as business owners, obviously you need to ensure that that all of your files tell a story and demonstrate that journey. Make sure that you have this 3-tier process in place. Quick example, because I know I'm running out of time. Requirements to check the identity of the other side conveyancer. Okay, that's in the property and mortgage fraud policy. So you identify what your stance will be. It might be you have 2 different tiers of requirements. So if a firm is local and known to you, and if a conveyancer is known and local to you, it might be have this particular stance, and anything else that falls outside that bracket. So if you're in the southeast and the other side conveyancer is based in the northeast and you don't know, it might be that you follow this procedure. So you set out what your procedure is, which is likely to be check the Law Society website, check the regulator's website, check the firm's website, etc., etc. That's what you will have documented. And then obviously you need to make sure that you follow that in practice. And when we have a conversation with interviewees, one of the questions we like to ask is, how do you check the identity of the other side's conveyancer? And hopefully they will tell us what is in the policy. And then we'll pick up a file. And that's where we need to see the evidence. So that's where we need to see, the screenshot of the Law Society Finder Solicitor website, or the telephone note, called this firm on this number, spoke to this person at this time, they confirmed the existence of Joe Blogg's conveyancer, etc., etc. So just make sure that you always keep that in mind. 3-tier process: say as you do as you say, and provide the evidence. just to kind of quickly identify for you, I'm sure these slides will be shared with you if they haven't been already, but we'll make sure that they are. So just to identify that we have the 7 sections of the standard. I don't have a great deal of time to run through them, but we have structure and strategy. This is where we have business continuity planning, management structure requirements. Section 2 is all about financial management, so where we set out all the procedures for sending money out, bring, money coming into the practice, what we're doing from a management point of view on financial matters on an annual basis, and monthly basis and quarterly basis, who has responsibility for finances, etc., all contained within Section 2. Section 3, information management and security, we have the data protection requirements have been expanded based on the 2019 version. And we also have a new requirement that didn't exist in the 2019 version of having a register of all the policies, plans and procedures contained within the core practice management standard, which and then you need to identify who's responsible for that and what your procedure is for the review of those policies and procedures and plans on an annual basis. So that's new. We also have people management, which is a new section, didn't appear in the last revision. However, we did have some learning and development requirements, but that's sat in a different part of the standard. So learning and development requirements have been expanded. But we also have new induction procedures as well. So if you're Excel accredited, you already have these in place. If you're not, then you need to set out procedures for new staff who start within the department, whether they're new to the firm or whether they're new to the department, and identifying training requirements and informing them of key policies and procedures, etc., etc. So that's new in this version of the core practice management standard. We then have Section 5, which is the largest section for obvious reasons, risk management, and this is where we see all the this is very operational. This is all about kind of identifying, recording risk, appointments of supervisors, managing instructions and conflicts, and recording and supervision and monitoring of key dates, monitoring files, all the supervision procedures of internally, so how people are supervised, which is expanded. We've also got an expanded section in relation to anti-money laundering. Property and mortgage fraud is also expanded based on the previous version as well. We see anti-bribery, and then we have the stamp duty, land tax, leasehold property and annual risk analysis, which are all expanded on the previous 2019 version. So this is very operational. This is where the majority of your policies and procedures will focus their efforts on. In relation to client 6, client care, we need to make sure that we've got all these procedures in place to deal with clients in an effective manner, to have appropriate service levels, to comply with the SRA transparency rules. This is where we find the requirements for reporting to lenders and complaints handling also expanded upon the previous standard, how we deal with declining instructions and accepting instructions, and also how we manage identifying client satisfaction as well. And then the final section, file and case management, undertakings, file management, having orderly files that are easy to understand, that the status of the matter can be checked easily by another member of the department, how we move, progress cases, how, what we do when we close conveyancing files, etc. That's all contained within file and case management. And there is also the third new requirement as well, which is to have a procedure in place to reduce or minimise the simple HMLR requisitions, and also providing clients with information that they can register up to 3 service addresses. So that's new in this new version of the standard. Obviously, conveyancing protocols, as a CQS accredited practice, you need to ensure that you are complying with those protocols, as it is compulsory as a CQS accredited firm. And ultimately, you know, I know I've just given you an awful lot of information and probably run over my time. Where you need to start is, as I say, review your core practice management standard. So that's your starting point. Then have a look at where you are, where you're at in terms of your documented policies and procedures to comply with that core practice management standard and the requirements. Consult with staff. You know, give everybody the opportunity to actually review a policy collectively, and give people the opportunity to actually put the hand up and say, well, actually, I do something different. On occasion, I need to depart from that because of this reason. And then as a practice, you've got the opportunity to sit down and say, okay, well, is that acceptable? If so, what do the parameters of that look like? What are the authorizations? And then you update your policy. So then you will have that mirror and that alignment between say as you do and do as you say. Or alternatively, it may be that the stance is, well, actually, no, this is what our policy is. It's written for a reason in this way, and you can't depart from the policy. So, you know, so something kind of needs to change if you do have any misalignment there. Document everything accurately, and then of course make sure you train the staff. It's not good enough to just make sure to update all your policies and procedures, not consult with people, and then expect them to be able to have a successful interview that will then lead to reduced non-compliances. So hopefully that has given you some valuable information about what's happening and when it's happening and what it looks like. I can see there are some Q&As. I am going to hand over to Lisa Edwards at InfoTrack, who will just give you a little bit more information, and then I'll deal with any Q&As at the end. So thank you for listening.
Hi there, everyone. Thanks very much for that, Tracy. And hello, everyone who's joined us today. Thank you for joining. I'm just going to end this webinar just with a quick 10 minutes to talk about how InfoTrack supports law firms when dealing with CQS and so on by using the platform itself. I know many of you who have joined us today already do. Some of you don't, but by using InfoTrack in itself, it helps you meet lots of requirements and tick lots of boxes when it comes to the criteria that you have to meet. So what I've done for the purpose of this demonstration today is I've worked around the new core practice management standards as opposed to policies direct. As Tracy mentioned earlier on in the webinar, there's so many subsections within CQS of policies you need to meet, criteria you need to meet, and so on. I thought I would start with the core practice management standards, just to let you know how, by using our technology, you are supported in meeting that criteria straight away. So through digital conveyancing, as you know, InfoTrack offers you an end-to-end firm-wide platform, which is available and visible for all of your team. So when it comes to the structure and strategy side of the CPMS, just by using InfoTrack, it ticks lots of boxes because it is a firm-wide account. Everything that you can do from the digital conveyancing process end to end meets a lot of criteria that you have to document and support within the CQS process. And of course, by having a platform that does everything and is accessible at any time, anywhere, it brings a lot of standardization across your conveyancing team. So documenting the software that you have to use and so on and so forth in the actual records becomes a lot easier, because everything being under one roof for digital conveyancing just makes things a little bit more streamlined if you are the person responsible for those procedures and policies. So working closely with CQS assessors, we have demonstrated that by using InfoTrack, organically, many of the criteria is met straight away for the CPMS structure. If we look at financial management for example, financial management covers a lot of things within the CPMS, but from an InfoTrack point of view, you can cover a lot of that criteria if you use our electronic client onboarding service, which allows you to deal with source of funds, client funds, and so on. Also, by using our system, having everything under one roof means that there's only one invoice to manage for each transaction, not the 6 or 7 that you may be used to if you don't use InfoTrack currently. It's one invoice for everything. So financial management becomes a whole lot easier to manage. You will see in a second that InfoTrack is a website portal, but that website portal can fit very nicely into your case management system. We integrate with most case management providers. So whether you use us via the web or via your case management system, you will have lots of financial control, but with CMS integration, automatic ledger updates, and make things a whole lot easier. So the recording of that process is pretty slick. Section 3 of the CPMS is information management. Of course, stringent on this, anti-money laundering policies, security policies, privacy policies, and so on. Of course, as your service provider, we have our own GDPR policies and security policies and privacy policies to actually back you up when stating that you use our software. And again, going back to that one portal for everything, it makes things a lot of streamlined. When it comes to talking about lenders as well, our LMS, our unique LMS integration just allows us to make things a whole lot easier too. And that new section that Tracy was talking about within the CPMS, when it comes to people management, with it being a firm-wide account, you have to understand that we do support you fully at the beginning of your journey with InfoTrack and throughout as well. And a lot of our firms who we work with currently, a lot of our customers build us into their induction programs. So if you have any new starters within the conveyancing team, part and parcel of their induction program is for us to get them up to speed with using the service provider of InfoTrack that you have chosen. So we take a lot out of your day-to-day work with our support. Also, there's lots of policies that you need to meet within CPMS, and there is something that I do keep repetitively talking about, and that's as being a firm-wide account. With a lot of service providers that are out there, users have their own username and password, which is a little bit insulated because they can only see what they're doing on a particular file. With InfoTrack, we understand how law firms work. Therefore, by standard, our website and our offering, our portal is firm-wide. So everybody can see what's going on within the firm, what's been ordered, what's been submitted, and so on. So no matter where your staff's located, whether they're working from home, on annual leave, taking leave of absence, and so on, everybody will be kept up to date with what's happening with their InfoTrack data at any time. So for that purpose, when it comes to the risk management section within the CPMS, a very hefty section, as Tracy mentioned earlier on, and really from a risk management perspective, by using InfoTrack, you are covering a lot of ground. We talk about recording key dates in conveyancing. Literally, we do that for you. Probably a couple of the key dates that are prominent within the process is how you actually monitor your priority alerts, when do they need to be refreshed, and so on. We build automatic priority alerts, land registry priority alerts, into the ordering platform of InfoTrack, and the dates of expiry are visible to everybody within the firm. Along with AP1 requisition management as well, you can compile, submit AP1s through us directly to the land registry, and we've built an AP1 dashboard to allow you to keep on top of managing requisitions. And as Tracy mentioned, there is extended edition of AP1 requisition management within the new criteria, which we fully support, and by using InfoTrack, you've met. ECOS, electronic client onboarding service as well, onboarding your clients electronically, looking at their bank account details, looking at their bank statements, and so on. It's all fully protected through us. And also from an AML point of view as well, which has also been extended. AML options within InfoTrack will cover your every need, right the way through to full AML, which is fully trackable and traceable through us, meaning that if something changes with your client during the duration of that transaction, you are immediately alerted to the fact that something has changed in their details. Property report as well, a lot of information in the CPMS about reporting. How do you report on leasehold information when it comes to a leasehold property? We allow you to do your report on title through InfoTrack very, very quickly and very concisely. Communicating key leasehold information is completely covered with every leasehold property that you deal with. For those of you who already use Property Report, you know that it's dynamic. It's built specifically to the property that you're dealing with at that time. So when it comes to leasehold information, things like ground rent, things about terms left on the actual leasehold and things are automatically covered. So by clicking a button basically and allowing the digitization of the report to be compiled, you will automatically know that you are covered from the leasehold information that you need to report on when using Property Report. LMS integration as well is very, very important when it comes to keeping things up to date, not just necessarily on your own work, but definitely with the LMS panel work that you have. So for example, when you order your priority searches, record your AP1s, our integration with your LMS portal just means that all documentation is fully updated straight away. So it just saves you time and you've got that area covered as well. Lender handbook management is specifically current because of the changes in the CPMS. We've got full access to the lender handbook directly from your InfoTrack account. It covers part 1, 2, particularly part 2 and 3 as well. So I'll show you in a second how you can actually manage your lender handbook requirements through us. Very, very streamlined, very quick, and we keep you alerted up to date. Section 6 as well, client care. When dealing with your client care letters, how you communicate with your customers. These 3 areas really do lend themselves to be able for you to communicate to your client, but also ensure that you're giving all the information that you need to give, either from point of instruction right the way through to reporting on the actual property itself as well. So a lot of the tools that we have will cover Section 6 fully. Section 7, filing case management, speaks for itself there. ECOS, LMS, Property Report and CMS integration, case management integration are the key features there. Now, just whilst you are on screen, and for those people who are not familiar with InfoTrack, I just want to share my screen with you here to show you what it looks like. So when using InfoTrack, literally, this is what you see. So all of our products and services are located in a workflow at the top of the screen. So as we mentioned there's electronic client onboarding service. With our service, you've got a number of options, whether you do that via an app, a branded app, which we can provide for you, or whether you want to do it directly from this website. It will allow you to send out electronic requests for identification, source of funds as well, verification of funds, and also the ability to send out protocol forms. So the Law Society protocol forms, particularly needed in a sale of a property, your TA 10 and so on and so forth, can be sent through digitally to your client via us. So that just means that the time it takes for your client to fill that in is reduced, because they do that electronically and they send it back to you fully complete as well. So becoming digitized for your onboarding process just means that you're getting the information that you need upfront. And of course, if you have got your InfoTrack account integrated into your case management system, all of that will drop straight back into your case management system as well. If you are working from the website portal, everything drops in here. We are a search provider, so we are a bona fide search provider. So all the usual local authority searches, drainage and water, the commodity that is searching is available through us. But if I move along this line here as well, here is your land registry. Okay, so all of your day-to-day documents that you order, probably on the portal at the moment, if you don't use InfoTrack, are available through us with a few added benefits. Productivity, and this is where the Property Report lies. So when you are ready to report on title for the transaction that you've worked with, this will be available for you to use. And seriously, you never have to leave InfoTrack to actually compile that report. And a freehold one takes typically 15 minutes to compile from start to finish. But remember, that's where all of the leasehold information can be held as well to report back to your client before closure. Bank check as well, so keeping up to date with your lawyer bank checkers and your client bank checkers are all here. But let's just take a quick look at that lender handbook as well, because this is a new feature for CQS. So I just wanted to make sure that you are fully covered with InfoTrack. So you will see here, it's very, very intuitive to use. You can select the parts of the lender handbook that you actually want to concentrate on, select the lender that you actually want to work with, either indefinitely or for that particular transaction. and filter on anything that you want in the way of dates and so on. Searching for updates as well is very, very easy. Select the lender, and that will allow you to see if there's any changes at a quick glance. And you can set up email alerts as well. So for any particular lender, you can actually select from the 129 listed which lender you would like alerts from. And that will automatically update you on log on of InfoTrack and also via email as well. So you will know what the change to the lender handbook is quickly in full. If you need to search for the updates as well, you can go back step and search for updates and get a full documented report. But everything that we send you via InfoTrack, whether you order it or we alert you to it, is documented. So you will always have that documentation to prove when working with CQS policies. Over to the right-hand side here, we have the calendar. Okay, so this is where your key dates are recorded. So as soon as you start using InfoTrack, this becomes active. So as I've mentioned, with our land registry integration, when you order OS priority searches with us, we build in alerts for you. So we will let you know when that document is due to expire. And because it's a firm-wide account, everybody within the firm sees this calendar. So if Scott Bazinis, for example, is off on annual leave and he's got a priority expiry that needs to be refreshed, anyone in the firm can refresh that. So it's visible to everybody. So this becomes almost like a checkpoint on a daily basis to see what is going on. That also lies with your AP1 requisitions as well, the requisition management. Now, the calendar is not just current, it's not just showing you what's going to happen tomorrow, it is historical. So that's a full lodge from when you started working with InfoTrack of all of your key dates. It's automatically recorded as soon as you start using our services. So just going to that land registry, just for a quick recce of what goes on in there. So in your land registry, all the day-to-day documents that you need with lots of benefits and features are here. But if I go to that OS priority, that's where the alerts are built in. So as soon as you order priority searches, they are there. And if you want us to integrate it with your LMS cases, we can set that up for you within a couple of hours. There you will find that you can then link the order of these documents to your LMS case, and that will update your LMS portal automatically as those results come through. So all of this, think how it's actually covering into CQS, the criteria that you have to meet, and just by using our system just helps you organically meet those requirements. Existing orders lodge everything that's going on with an order. And again, because it's firm-wide, everybody's got access. All documentation is accessible at any time. So work never stops. People can pick up where somebody else left off and everything is displayed. And again, remember, if you are integrated with your case management system, everything will be dropping in straight to matter into your case management system as well. Over to the workflow at the top of the screen, just to complete this session. Post-completion, there we have SDLT and AP1, so you can compile, submit and manage your post-completion fully with us. And for those who are aware of the AP1 digitised deadline in November 2022, where all AP1 submissions have to be submitted digitally from November of this year, by using InfoTrack, you've met that deadline date straight away. We've been working with Land Registry now for 7 years as a trusted partner. We've been digitised with AP1 for a long time. The benefit of using InfoTrack, of course, is that your AP1 and your SDLT are 85% populated when you are ready to submit. Because we're gathering all the data digitally, all of the data is recorded, the results are scanned, extracted information from to compile your AP1 within 3 minutes, no matter how complex it is. So once submitted through us, your AP1 dashboard becomes active, and your AP1 dashboard will let you know by this little token here if there is anything that needs to be addressed. And again, going back to being firm-wide, if there's staff absences and so on, you are not going to miss a requisition because everything is managed through the AP1 dashboard. And this just allows you to basically liaise direct with the land registry operator. And you will see from here that the requisitions can be viewed, answered, and submitted without delay. So all the communication is here. And again, this all lands into case management if you are integrated with us, but is visible for everybody. So everything is on track. So a little bit rushed through to actually get through the InfoTrack platform, but hopefully you get the gist of how we organically support you when using our services. So just for this purpose, I'm just going to nip back to my slides and finish up. So a little bit more about InfoTrack, all under one roof. Again, keep saying it, firm-wide account, but in today's circumstances, you don't know how valuable that is. People can still access the case data that they need to when using InfoTrack, no matter where they are within the country. And that's something that needs to be covered within CQS, geographical location, pandemic risk assessment, and so on and so forth. InfoTrack is 24/7. One invoiced as well, so no misdisbursements, everything under one roof just means that everything is lodged straight away, makes financial control a whole lot easier. No subscription to users, pay as you go. We're not case management, but remember we do integrate into case management. So if you don't have a case management, you can still use us via the web, but we do integrate with most case management systems as well, and we do that for you. So without further ado, thank you very much for your time. Tracy and I, it's been a pleasure to actually have you on board to listen to us. Sorry it's gone over a little bit, but there's a lot of information to take in and we do hope that's helpful. So I'm going to go back to Faye now just for the question and answer session. Thank you, Faye.
Great, thank you both very much indeed for your presentations and insights. We've had quite a few questions through. I'll try and get through as many as we can as time permits. So let's just jump into the first one. Actually, I'll just cover off. We've had a few questions coming in asking if we're going to be sending a copy of this recording in the slides. So just to let everybody know, yes, we will be following up with a copy of the recording for you. So you've got this to take away and digest at your leisure. So the first question I've got now is for Tracy. Our firm is Lexel accredited. With the Lexel assessment report, will the Lexel assessment report be suitable to use as the AML independent audit?
That's a good question, actually. No, quite simply. Actually, to be fair, that is a question that we do get asked quite a lot. So within the anti-money laundering policy that needs to meet the requirements of legislation, there is the requirement that firms, given the consideration as to the size and nature of their practice, should carry out an independent AML audit to monitor the controls, and measures in place and make sure the policy is fit for purpose and everybody's trained, etc., etc. That is something that is more in depth. So that would be an audit that is carried out on a regular basis, dependent on what you as a firm decide would that regular basis would look like, whether it's 6 monthly, annually, every 2 years. And that would be very specific, random selections of residential conveyancing files, looking at all different aspects of AML. So source of funds, source of wealth, CDD, PEP exposure, etc., etc. So the Lexel assessment, obviously, you appreciate, is looking at Lexel as a whole quality standard, and the same with CQS as well, because the requirements are identical. So the AML audit function is very specific, it's far more in depth, and there is a very specific purpose to that. So no, CQS nor Lexel assessment report, that would not suffice for the SRA's purposes when they come out and do the thematic review and ask you for your AML audit records.
Okay, that's great, thank you. Somebody has asked, is there a cost to the on-site assessment?
Okay, so as it stands at the moment, there is no cost being passed on to the firm. However, as these things are always evolving, I would expect that to change in the future, but certainly this year, there's not likely to be any additional cost to the firm other than what they normally pay for the reaccreditation application.
Okay, great, thank you. Another question that's come through, can I have my documents checked by the Law Society before they come out to do the assessment?
You can't have them checked by the Law Society. There is the possibility that practices could request a voluntary CQS assessment at some point, because that is a question that I've been asked on a fairly regular basis by practices that actually want to go ahead with and have their practice assessed. One of my most popular services at the moment as an independent consultant is to undertake CQS reviews. So effectively do a mock assessment or gap analysis to give practice practices some indication as to where they would and would not meet the requirements of the standard. And there are lots of compliance companies around the country who are also offering that service.
Okay, great, thank you. Do you have any idea of the percentage or number of CQS firms that will be subject to on-site assessments per year?
No, because it is a moving feat in terms of number of assessors, which will grow over time as well. So the amount of practices that will be assessed initially, certainly this year, will start off in small numbers. But ultimately, as we progress and obtain more data and refine the process, then the numbers for assessments will increase going forward, and there will be more assessors applied as a resource. But ultimately, the ultimate aim is that all practices will be CQS assessed at some point.
Okay, that's great. I've had someone that's asked, they were wondering whether firms have to conduct AML for all clients, including immigration clients and clients requiring independent legal advice, and also who bears the cost of the AML search? Is it the firm or is it the client?
Okay, specific AML questions about what AML CDD requirements that you should be following in practice is very specifically an AML question rather than a CQS question. So obviously practices are required to ensure that they have a policy and procedure in place that meets the requirements of legislation. Practices need to ensure that they are adequately trained to understand what that legislation looks like and what you should actually be doing in practice. So it's not really appropriate for a CQS session to answer that. In terms of the costs for identifying clients, the LSAG guidance of January 2021, I forget what year we're in now, reviewed that position, and it is acceptable for firms to be able to pass on the costs of electronic ID verification, for example. However, do bear in mind transparency, ensuring that you are giving clients upfront full information in the terms of business client care letter, and that obviously any charges that you're making to the client are fully transparent, and that then that accords with the information that you are publishing on your website under the SRA transparency rules.
Okay, that's great. Somebody has asked, will they need to tell their insurer if they receive any non-compliance?
Okay, this is also a question actually that we get asked quite a lot. Okay, so the insurance sector itself obviously are aware that there are changes to CQS and to the scheme rules. At the moment, when you deal with your professional indemnity insurance renewal, you will be obviously completing, many pages of information, and as part of that renewal process, you will be asked the question already. Are you CQS accredited, and what's your CQS number and date of accreditation? The most recent forms that I've seen ask that information have done for a number of years. With Lexel accredited firms, the insurers ask the question, are you Lexel accredited? But they then go on to say, please provide us with a copy of your most recent Lexel report. I personally suspect that going forward, whether it's this next round of renewals or thereafter, that we will start to see the indemnity insurers asking for copies of the report if you've been assessed as part of the CQS scheme rules. So I expect there to be some changes and some more transparency with regard to what the lenders ask for. You would need to check your own terms and conditions of your policy as to whether you would need to identify any actions to the insurers in between those renewal dates. If you had an on-site assessment and you had major or minor non-compliances, I can't imagine that would be something that would need to be reported to your lender. To your indemnity insurer. However, if you then fell into the next part of the process because you didn't have a successful outcome, whether it was the assessment didn't take place, or whether you were not able to deal with the corrective actions either in the required timescales or to the satisfaction of the Law Society, and you then fell into the next part of the process, which could be suspension and then potential revocation of your CQS accreditation. And there would be a process for that. There is a CQS appeals panel, so that's not something that would happen overnight. There is then the possibility, dependent on your terms and conditions, that you may then be required to notify your insurers, or indeed lenders as well. Obviously, lenders are quite heavily involved in, having successful assessments from practices. So similar provisions apply, really.
Okay, that's great, thank you. We've got a question for Lisa, please. Can you download the initial lender handbook to the matter on InfoTrack as well as the updates?
Yes, you can. Yeah, you are able to do that. And if a person's asking, needs any assistance in how to do that, just contact me and I will get in touch with you.
Okay, that's great. I think we're probably almost out of time. I think I'll probably get one more last quick question in. I'm conscious that we have overrun, but we will come back to everybody else's questions. So the last one is, how often will the on-site assessments be carried out?
That's something that the decision hasn't yet been made. Ultimately, the initial goal is that all CQS accredited practices would be assessed. Whether that then changes into something on a more regular as time goes on, we'll have to wait and see. The Law Society will make that decision, and if that is the case, and we then have maybe some kind of 3-year assessment to fall in line with the 3-year CQS cycle. Who knows? It is something that is a moving feat, and it is discussed on a regular basis, but no firm decisions have been made going forward.
Okay, that's lovely. Well, I do think we've overrun quite considerably, so probably everybody needs to get going. So I'd like to say a huge thank you to Tracy Thompson, Tracy Thompson Associates, for joining us today, and also to Lisa Edwards from InfoTrack for her insights on how InfoTrack can support the journey. So I hope everybody's found this session helpful and informative. We've certainly had lots of comments saying how useful it's been. So thank you very much. If you do have any other questions about anything you've learned today, or questions in relation to the changes to the core practice management standards for the CQS, then please do contact us or reach out to your account manager, who'll be able to assist you. This session is being recorded and we will send you a copy so that you can refer back to all of the notes and information. So all that's left to say is thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you very much to Tracy and Lisa, and enjoy the rest of your day, everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Listening.